Who's the independent voter in Arizona this 2020 presidential election?
Well, we sort of have two different ways that we think about independence. One is whether people are actually registered as an independent, and the other is whether people just tell pollsters they're independent. So, if we're looking at registered voters, we're seeing a decline in independence as people are participating more in the primary process. They wanted to choose a primary candidate for the Democratic nominee. So, we have a slight advantage to Republicans when it comes to registered voters. When we ask people without focusing on their registration, which party they support, we do still see a sizable percentage of Arizonans saying they're independent. And among those independents, Biden now seems to have a bit of a lead. So, as always, we find that independents tend to have partisan preferences, but they don't necessarily want to publicly identify with that party.
So this year we saw the presidential preference primary where independents had to pick a party. And in Arizona, currently there are more Republicans than independents than Democrats. So what does that tell you when the independents are saying, OK, I'll go with the conservative party on this one?
Well, Arizona has historically had more voters who identify with the Republican Party than they do with the Democrats. So that's not necessarily anything new. That we have had a pretty big surge of new voters registering as Democrat in Arizona. So, we still have more Republicans than Democrats, but the question is, how are these people actually going to vote in the 2020 election? And it's not necessarily clear that the Republicans will have the advantage on election day.
Arizona, widely considered a battleground state. What can we expect over the next 6 to 8 weeks here as we inch closer toward November?
We can expect a lot of ads. We can expect a lot of presidential visits. Biden has said Arizona is now on his list of battleground states that he'll visit, which is really big for the state. A lot of the indication for who's going to win at the presidential level comes from our Senate polling. We know that Mark Kelly actually has a pretty sizable lead over Martha McSally now. It varies depending on which surveys and which polls you're looking at, but it seems as though right now he has the advantage, and that can give us a good indicator as to how people are going to vote in the presidential race also. So Arizona is going to get a lot of attention in the next few months, that's for sure.
Did the independent interest shift much between 2016 and what we'll see here in 2020?
Well, the most recent polling that I've seen shows independents preferring Biden. That does not necessarily mean that these are traditionally Democratic voters. One of the big shifts that we've seen among public opinion in Arizona is this big shift in how people are viewing Donald Trump. Up until about February, early winter 2019, Trump actually had a higher approval rating here in Arizona than disapproval rating. But consistently for more than a year now, the majority of Arizonans disapprove of Trump. And that's really going to be his biggest challenge in 2020. And it could be why we're seeing this advantage among independents to Biden, despite the fact that most Arizonans do say that they are Republicans.
Okay, you're the political scientist. You study this, you look forward to it. What do you say is the big talker here over the next few weeks as the candidates continue to visit the state?
I'd have to say coronavirus, getting the schools open, getting businesses back open, getting people back to work. I mean, Arizona has really suffered as a result of coronavirus. We've seen huge unemployment numbers in our state. We've seen a lot of evictions. We've seen people who are not getting their unemployment benefits. That's what Biden is going to be talking about. And Trump is going to try to convince Arizonans that he's done the best he could given the circumstances, and that if they stick with him, he will see us through the huge recession that we're going through right now. So, if COVID had not hit, I would have said for sure immigration. That seems to be, the real issue that presidential candidates like to focus on here in Arizona. Trump was in Arizona not that long ago talking about immigration. He was down in Yuma talking about the border wall. But I think most people have kind of moved past immigration right now. They want to talk about, when are our kids going back to school? When are we going to be back to work? When are we getting our unemployment benefits? That's got to be the big issue leading right up to the election.
All right. The pandemic really having this overarching theme over politics this year. All right. Professor Samara Klar, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Lorraine.